Hey everyone, this is Adam. I haven't recorded in quite some time for the After Dark channel, but my friends in Turkey and the EU have requested new videos, and I decided that this time, instead of just me doing it, because I'm an old guy, I decided to get a newer perspective as well compared to my older perspective, and that newer perspective is my good friend here. Hey, tell them who you are and your history with One World.
Hello, I am A. I'm only 21 and I've been playing since I was 18, which is 3 years if I'm doing my math correctly. I am currently the historian coordinator as well as a slew of different sub coordinators. So I get to play around with history and I love this game, I'll be honest with you. Every nook and cranny and flaw and merit. So I'm really excited to talk about it today.
Awesome. Thanks. All right, so we got some questions from you guys from the possible One World Turkish players and the EU players that are looking to join One World by Night. And so I have those. I gave those to A, and we're going to kind of review them. And so I think I'll just start with the first one. And I'm actually going to toss it to A because I think your perspective on it is the best on this particular. And then I'll kind of give my perspective because, again, I've been doing this since I was 14. I'm 41, so it's quite a while. So it's good to have a younger, newer perspective than mine that I won't see things that, that A will in this particular instance. So the first question, in general, how forgiving this whole thing is going to be, being One World, specifically this LARP for beginners. Things like breaking character to tell or rephrase something, or describe a scene or yourself, and stuff like that. Things in a tabletop role-playing player is used to, but maybe does not particularly work well in LARP. So what do you think?
It's incredibly forgiving, especially if you're a newer player. A lot of players are usually very patient, at least very welcoming. I mean, after all, you're jumping into a new hobby with someone else. They're excited that you're also into the hobby. And when all goes bad, or maybe there's a bad experience, talking to the ST is the best way to move forward. I know when I first started, I jumped into the community. I didn't know anyone. There were already pre-established cliques, and it felt very daunting. But as soon as you sort of waddle your way in there and you show your willingness to sort of jump into the fray, a lot of people love that. If you're willing to put in the work to read the books, or hey, not even read the books, at least go in, have fun, touch things, talk to STs, expand on your character, most people are pretty welcoming. Well, I say there's bad apples, they're always going to be. That's not exceptional to Obi-Wan or even exceptional to LARP in general. But you'll find that a majority of people are good to stave away those people and help you have a good time. Because in the end, LARP is about having fun. It's not about min-maxing or writing the best character you possibly have. It's about having fun in a fictional setting.
Yeah, ideally, right? Yeah, so I'll say kind of the same thing. I think that, and I try to promote a lot as an ST. We in any game in tabletop or LARP, metagaming has a very negative connotation to it. You never do it. It's bad. It's cheating. I believe in positive metagaming, which is conversations. It's really just saying, hey, you should just talk to people more often on an out of game basis. Like if my character and A's character are beefing, let's say, and A didn't intend for that to be the case, but I took it that way. There's nothing wrong for me to reach out to A, like during there's a break in the game or after game, and be like, "Hey, by the way, are we beefing now? Because I'm interpreting this as beefing." And if A's like, "Yes, we are. Let's do that," and then I'd be like, "Okay, cool. I know where the boundaries are." But if A was like, "Actually, no, I didn't intend that at all, and I don't have any interest of starting like a rivalry," then you can be like, "Okay, cool." So that is I would say, a growing culture in One World by Night. It was definitely not the case 10 years ago, that you should be like everything should be in character was kind of like where things landed, and then we kind of grew as a community and realized that's maybe not necessarily the best way to handle things, especially with intense role play. I mean, Vampire the Masquerade is designed for you to play political douchebags against your fellow friends. Like you're going to have hurt feelings if there's not constant communication about those feelings and where people are landing. I mean, I assume you're kind of nodding your head like, yeah, I agree with a lot of this, but always tell me if I'm fucking wrong, so feel free.
Yeah, exactly. And also, most Discords usually have a out of character check-in channel where if you are feeling like things are pretty tense, or maybe you're afraid of doing something wrong, or you're feeling that maybe out of character connotations are bleeding in character, that's usually the best spot to add someone. Or if you're nervous about it, DMs are always open with permission. Things of that nature are tools that we're starting to use to move forward. And from when I started, that culture has been great. Even in one of the areas where I live in, where like political shenanigans are usually very intense, we still have that sort of culture of like, okay, let's take a step back. How are you doing? There's a particular thing after game that we call afters. And afters, usually you're sitting with people at the table. This isn't with Discord, but usually with more live games, where you can sit around with people and talk with them. It's harder to do that on Discord, but usually the general channel or just hopping in voice calls will also do. There's something about talking to someone live as opposed to just typing on a screen that really helps things sort of click into place.
Yeah, I would agree. It also helps you realize that you're talking to another human being, which happens a lot of the dissonance in just online texting instead of just voice chat. So that's a good point. Voice chat is a great way to go to realize, oh, it is another human being I'm talking to, specifically when it comes to Discord play. All right, so we're going to move on to the second one, which is a follow-up to the first one, maybe some advice, recommendations, or basic type of things for people coming from Vampire the Masquerade or in general tabletop role-playing side of things to LARP. Like what should players be aware of and try to be careful, and what fundamental differences apart from mechanics that players should be on the lookout for? Go ahead, Ed. Go ahead.
I actually have an answer to this. When you're in LARP, expect things to be a lot more broad. So in tabletop, you're used to being special. I guess special isn't really the way I put it. You can still be special on LARP. It's more like you're used to getting intense amount of attention from the ST at all times because you're sitting around with like two other players, and the ST only has 5 people to manage. When you're actually jumping into LARP, though, the ST can have up to 20 people to manage, sometimes more, upwards of 100, or even more if you're at an event games. So the ST will probably have to take their pace, and you will have to become far more independently motivated. Your goals are going to have to come from you looking around the area, or maybe even finding a goal in your local game, or reaching out to other players to see how they go. So a lot more things in LARP are incredibly just you talking to another player instead of you talking with an ST, and that's hard to sort of move into. Another difference is that there's a lot more PvP involved. So of course, tabletop is usually a lot more of a collaborative structure, and that's fine. And I'm sure that some tables also have political shenanigans between each other's players. But when you jump into LARP, there's a lot more people because you're talking to individuals who have been playing this game for 10, 5 years, or players that are completely new, working on their own goals, their own ambitions. And you are another part of their revolving circle the same way that they are a part of your revolving circle. And managing that sort of open-ended environment can be very overwhelming. I know when I first joined, choice paralysis went crazy. And having to deal with what am I going to do in the future? Oh my God, there's so many points on my sheet. I don't know what I'm doing in this combat. Oh God, the ST is asking me questions. I don't have the answers to them. Really, the best advice I can give is take it every step of the way. Don't feel pressured to move forward instantaneously. And don't feel pressure on yourself that there are other characters that are bigger points than you, because the downside of having 20 years of an org means that there's some older players around, Adam. And comparing yourself to them is not healthy, and it also isn't very fun. So make your own path, move forward at your own pace, and take advice from the people around you, but don't take it too much to heart.
Yeah, that's a fantastic answer. I would say it's I started in LARP before I discovered tabletop, so I have the reverse of this, right? Going from LARP to playing tabletop was a world of difference of like you're right, and you nail it on the head. When you play a tabletop, it is a collaborative game, generally speaking. There might be moments between the players where there's competition or strife, but it's generally not the point. And it's not to say that OneWorld's point is PvP. There is a lot of games that are collaborative. Coney, the one in particular, I don't run PvP, and then that's not to say you can't have beef with other players, but like I'm not into like running giant mass combats or please see players kill other players' characters. I'm here to tell a story. Please join in. But there are games out there that their primary game motive is like, no, it's player versus player. That's what this game is. And there's nothing wrong. And the best part I would say about One World by Night is because of the number of games and non-uniformity. If you find a game you don't like that doesn't fit with how you want to play a game, just go to another one. Yeah.
Another one.
Yeah.
No one will judge you.
Right. There is a game out there for everyone. It's just not every game is for everyone, if that makes sense. All right. So that was a good question. The next one we have, which I'm probably going to tackle most of, which is funny because you're the historian cord. How different How different is OWBN Sabbat lore, the myth, the canon, and history from tabletop Sabbat? Okay, so key thing about One World by Night is the canon of Vampire the Masquerade, and I'm not counting 5th edition because Sabbat doesn't exist in 5th edition. We're not touching that. Is it ended in 2004. So One World by Night was playing in 2004 and decided to not end the world, quite obviously, as we're having a discussion about One World by Night. One World by Night, unlike most organizations, does not have an organizational reset. It is the same continuous story that has started since 1993 up until now in 2025. That is not an expectation for you to know all of that history. In fact, almost all of the history, I would say, at this point of the 90s is virtually lost unless you are really lucky and know where to look, or you find someone that played it.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. A lot of people will talk about history. A lot of people. Don't feel a pressure to know it, but if you want to know it, the best way to do it isn't to read a book. It's to ask other characters about their history. And from there, you get instant connections, you get knowledge of what's happened, and what you might want to do moving forward based on that history. It's good. That's it. Go on.
So here's the major differences. New York City did not fall to the Camarilla. The Sabbat Crusade of the East Coast did happen, but most of the Cam cities remain. Like Atlanta is Cam. It's basically little pockets here and there. So there was growth of the Sabbat in the 90s in the Crusade, and the appointment of like Cardinal Polonia. That all stuff happened. The death of Moncada happened in canon. The death of Regent Galbraith and the cover-up, that all happened and played out. And the story from there somewhat progressed. There, I will say the Coney Wiki is a useful spot for this because I've detailed out the history changes of the progress of the take the plot from Vampire the Masquerade Revised and where it ended, and we continued it on from there. And that's really where your differences are going to be when it comes to the canon and the story specifically. Now, when it comes to the genre of itself, the tabletop genres of both any of the White Wolf games, any of the World of Darkness, do not and cannot translate directly one for one to a multinational LARP org with no ending story. It just does not work. So the core Sabbat tabletop guide to the Sabbat is a good place to start for what the genre is. But for example, that book details the Sabbat in two different ways. One is in a dark church-like cult structure with intrigue and politics, and then the other is like, hey, we drive around a car and murder people in bars because it's fun.
We blow up dumpsters, kumbaya, we'll beat the shit out of you, kind of beat.
Right, right. And so the one of these types is a far more sustainable long-term story than the other type. Like the idea of like the Sabbat was created off of the ideas by White Wolf for like off of the movies Near Dark and Lost Boys. The vampires in those movies are the bad guys, and while they're cool and dark and mysterious and do all these edgy things, that is not sustainable in a long-term story. Like that's not interesting. That's not character growth. These guys are just monsters doing monstrous shit. So it's not to say that One World and LARP in general for Sabbat doesn't have these aspects. I would say they're not the primary focus. The dark religious aspects in like the crusade against the antediluvians and the end of the world is much more of a focus, which is more of a meta plot heavy kind of focus, I think. I'll say that the other main difference is in order to create and foster a political environment for the game to thrive, we emphasized the Sabbat factions more than anything else. They are a huge part of the game. Every player can pick one. We have a packet that details them out, fully fleshes them out. Also an STV book. You can buy that. I wrote that. But it fully fleshes out in details, and I highly encourage you to do that. I will say that the core of fun in One World by Night Sabbat is and will always be the pack. Start there, get a group of friends, and you will have the most fun if your pack is like doing things together and you're role playing together. And then everything else you can kind of reach out and select and touch. Like, oh, I am interested in these types of politics. I'm interested in the right eye. I'm interested in Nazism. I'm interested in blowing up this bar. Sure, these are all things you can do. But that would be like the core focus. Other than that, I would say there's some slight differences in the history in that Radu is the region of the Sabbat, has been for almost 10 years now, which I can't believe.
People love him.
People love Radu.
Really love him.
They are
Also,
Go ahead.
There's an entire new faction called the Crimson Horde.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which is based off of a New England book. Funny enough. And the other thing, kind of to A's point, is there are resources to get this information. The Coney Wiki has a lot of them. Hopefully, the new One World site will. I just got tired of waiting for the new One World site, so I decided to just put stuff up. And then just don't feel bad or hesitate to not reach out to like STs or the other players, especially in Sabat. In my experience, the players are very welcoming and like will welcome your questions and will answer as best they can or direct you to the source you need to get the answer you want. At least I think. I don't know. I think I'm off base there, that in my experience, the Sabat players are a little bit more like, yeah, welcome. Hey, you're part of us. What do you want to know? Is that the kind of vibe you got?
Some players are 100% like that. And you're right in saying that the pack is the greatest way to get started. Just a pack of people doing a whole bunch of other stuff is great for getting the fundamentals of Sabat. You don't need to think too big. Like, even with a character concept, if you make a shovelhead who has no idea about Sabat lore, because you, as the player, have no idea about the changes, that's a great way to start. Legitimately, one of the best ways you can start is with a blank slate. Because when you come in, you go, guys, what's a raite? I want to get initiated tonight. The rest of the players are like, all right, let's go bomb 7-Eleven.
Yeah, let's go. This video's not getting flagged.
Don't worry about it. In Minecraft, on a video game. That's fine.
All right, so I think that answered that question. We'll move on to the next one without less attraction from the NSA. All right, so the next one is maybe touching a little bit on how Sabat is usually depicted as monstrous, sadistic creatures, and even if they are not that extreme, they are always depicted as a group of vampires who embrace their condition and doesn't give a shit about humans at all. How this type of group will play in LARP as a long-form game and characters. Do you want to start?
Yes.
Okay, go.
So in LARP, you'll have a variety of different player types. You'll have some Sabat that are super into humanity, some Sabat that are that sadistic monster. But the truth of a Sabat is that as you're evolving around the people around you, even if you're playing a one-note type of Sabat character that you usually seen in books or movies, they will naturally evolve. That's the benefit of having this long-form sort of role play. Your characters, as they are moving, as they are touching different things, as they are talking to people, they will naturally evolve out of the concept they originally made. Is that a bad thing? God, no. That's the most fun part about roleplay. How are things affecting your character? How are new ideas evolving them? How what sort of places are they looking to go in the future? Do they have aspirations? Do they have no aspirations? Why? And you're shaping that with your hands with every game or every downtime into something new. So if you do want to play that monstrous, terrible, fucked up kind of person who's killing people, that's fine. We have characters like that. In fact, they double down on that concept and evolve into something new. Do you kill people? Why do you kill people? In a video game. Don't flag me, NSA.
That's hilarious. So what I'll say is this, and it's a common question about Sabat as a whole. You'll find tons of YouTube videos where they're like people trying to address these issues with Sabat. Because like to my previous point, it is not a sustainable story to tell a story about the characters from the Lost Boys. It's not. It's fun for like an evening for sure. But what I'll say is this: what they miss the point of a lot, and my buddy Lex put it to me this really well once, and he was like, "Open up the tabletop cam guide. Like, just look at the clans and the characters." And he's like, "Look at the art." And he's like, "The art is very, it's kind of is what it is. It's not bad. It's just very vanilla, right?" And he's like, "Go open the tabletop guide to the Sabat and look at the art for like the anti-tribute. Notice how much more detail and nuance there is in that." And they did that as an artistic choice for a reason, in that on the surface, if someone explains to you what Sabat is, you're gonna go, "That's stupid. It's what you're just murdering like hobos." And they miss the point that, like, for example, there is no path of enlightenment that a Sabat vampire can go on where you can just casually kill. There's not a one. That's not a sin that will not cause you to wassail. So the idea that they're just mass murdering freaks is not a thing. And the difficulty there is a lot of the path of enlightenments are advanced play. Most of the Sabat players in One World are on paths of enlightenment, and it's a kind of understanding being interested in philosophy, because that's what these are. They are alien philosophies that vampires develop to cope with their beast mechanism. So, you're not going to see, yeah, power and inner voice vampire might murder a mortal who steps to him and try, like if a cop arrests, pulls over a vampire and power in the inner voice to give him a ticket, he's going to probably casually kill him because how dare you question my authority while I'm driving. But like an honorable accord vampire would be like, I did break the law, so I should get this ticket and not murder the cop. Again, NSA, don't come after us.
In a video game.
So yeah, so on the surface, it's a very surface level understanding and requires a lot of depth and stopping to like go back and consider, well, okay, if I was actually this vampire, why would I mass murder? Right? If you're going to kill or disregard humanity, and a lot of that is the Sabbat propaganda, right? And that's a key thing to remember is the Sabbat propaganda is just as good as the Cam propaganda, except out of game, people seem to think the Sabbat propaganda is correct, and I have to be
They
like,
sort of click into it.
they
It's very fascinating.
they click into it when I'm like, your sect is also run by elders, just like the Camarilla, that use this entire thing as a mechanism to control you so that you don't rebel. Like that's what it is. And they're like, no, it's.
Yeah, I want to be clear, that's not a downside. The tragedy aspect of this game is ingrained, and I'm sure y'all know that because you played tabletop, and that's the fun part. You're playing a character that's trying to maneuver against great odds, and you're either winning or you're losing, and maybe some great parts in between, mostly great parts in between, but
Yeah, I mean, you got to remember the Sabbat is in many ways a dark reflection of the Catholic Church. That's kind of what its base structure is when they wrote it. It is vampire church. And I think we can all agree, all religions, all churches, they have some parts in them where you're like, but wait a second, that doesn't make sense to what you just said. And the Sabbat is exactly the same. It is a no, this is the word of Cain and this is the way things are. And you got to understand out of game that like nah man, it's just propaganda. So the idea that Sabbat like murder babies and it's just rampaging violence all the time ignores a lot of the depth of the genre that I think is there and dismissed very casually by just reading through the surface of it and be like, this is just wanton violence. There's no point to this. No, the Sabbat is incredibly political. It is deeply religious. Murder, when it happens, should be for a very specific purpose and reason, again, within the game, NSA. But I always used to say, if you want to run a perfect Sabbat game, a good Sabbat game, every game you need to hit three things as a storyteller: politics, religion, and violence. Violence does appear in there, but that can be like violence takes many forms, right? It could be like I trash this car next to me because I'm riding the wave of my beast and being descriptive about it. It's not violence isn't like we go attack the 7-Eleven because like why would you attack a 7-Eleven?
no, it can be. It 100% can be. How you want to interpret it is how you want to interpret it. But the most amount of fun you'll have is killing with utilitarian purpose and not killing for forlorn purpose. That makes sense.
Yep. Yep. So I hope that answered it. Like I said, that's a really good question. It's a very deep question. And a lot of people miss it with Sabbat, particularly. I mean, when I started playing, I was a cam player and I looked at Sabbat and was like, this is stupid. Like, what is this?
Yeah, back in the O's.
Oh, in my day. All right, the next question. In the default, I just said defart.
Nice.
We're going to keep that. That's not getting edited out. All right. In the default LARP rules, you use rock, paper, scissors, but I've seen people roll dice via the bot, and I'm curious how the conflict resolve over text as a second part of the question. If we were to use video voice, are we going to use rock, paper, scissors, or something else? So this is kind of specific to Coney, but it does touch on the larger base of the Discord culture of One Roll by Night. I'll say yes. Okay, so when it comes to Coney, we tend to use a D3 instead of rock, paper, scissors. When I run scenes, I tend to just go, hey, here's the difficulty in case you tie. You can retest. This is how many successes you need, how many dice you need to roll. So it's very similar to tabletop in Discord because I found that be way easier than trying to run rock, paper, scissors. And then I got to secretly be like, when the last time I ran a big combat with like 80 players and I used this system, they're like, wow, this is really smooth. And I was like, it's just tabletop with D3s. That's all I did. So we'll walk you through that for sure. Every game handles it differently. A lot of times for most of the Discord games, I will say a 1 is just rock, a 2 is paper, and 3 is scissors. It's pretty much translates that way pretty well.
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
Which is if you're doing stacks, which is another part of the system, where you're just like you're essentially chopping or doing rock paper scissors with a mysterious entity that gives you a yay or a nay. 1 is usually win, 2 is usually tie, and 3 is usually loss.
So that pretty much covers that. If we do, I should say we, I might pop in from time to time, but my ST Nick has volunteered to run your game on like Saturdays at noon because I'm gonna be real, I'm gonna be asleep because I sleep on the weekends. But I might pop in from time to time and run some things. But that's a conversation you can have with him. I'm sure Nick will be like, "What do you want to do? Do you want to do rock paper scissors over video? Do you want to do dice?" He'll work that whatever you guys want to do with that. Either way, he'll cover what the rules are. All right. So the next one is there is a list in the OWBN main Discord, and it lists every discipline, merit, and all other stuff from the tabletop RPG side of things of the LARP books, but don't have with book reference page numbers. So I was curious if one picks any of these, if they can from the list, how the conversion happens, and are those things allowed? All right, so here's the fun, confusing part. One Roll by Night uses every single edition of Vampire the Masquerade, actually the World of Darkness, except for V5. I think that's like fucking it. It's just V5.
Yeah, it's V5 and like I think a few niche books as they go. But because all books are on the table, really, if you're asking for a conversion, the best way you're going to do it is ask the ST. You're like, hey, ST, I found this cool niche merit that I think is really cool. Can I use it? What would be the Met translation? And the ST will be like, I got an idea. And then you can talk back and forth on it until you come to something that you both agree with. I will be honest, a lot of those merits have Met translations, whether they be from the core book, which already has a Met translation inside, or they're from a niche book somewhere that someone in the rest of the organization has used before and transferred into Met. So regardless, you'll be good to go. So don't feel hesitant to choose any of those unless Nick or your ST is like, hey, I don't really feel comfortable with you using those merits. And if you want to know which merits they feel uncomfortable with, the best way to do that is to find their house rules, which you'll usually have listed somewhere, or you can just ask them on Discord. It all works. And then look there and go to the merits section and see their opinions on certain merits.
Awesome. Great answer. Yeah, I'll say if you need a specific page and book reference, you're like, hey, I found this thing in a game. Where is it? Just do what everyone else does in One World and just ask me. And I'll just be like, it's on this page. It's here. Because I'm an old guy that has read everything. But that joke aside, there is someone in the org, just ask around and they will be like, oh, it's here. And they'll probably screen cap it for you and send it to you. So it's pretty easy. Again, this just comes down to just ask your fellow player and your ST. Not a big deal. We certainly don't mind. All right, next question. Oh, these are more mechanical questions. So let's see. Does a morality path on high levels and low levels give bonuses or disadvantages? I think they're called bearings in tabletop role-playing and or in the Dark Ages versions. So overall in the org, varies on game, depending on the house rules. Not a lot of them use it. I used to use it for Coney for a really long time because I do like that system. It's very cool. And then I just found nobody else wanted to use it. So, because like you just, if there's like 5 million mechanics, people just forget stuff like that. So I ditched it after a while, just like, oh, well, this is cool. I like it, but nobody's using it. So it depends on the game is the answer to your question. Coney does not currently. That is something I'm happy to revisit if my player base was like, no, we really like the aura mechanics. I'd be like, okay, well, nobody used them before, but I guess we'll try now.
You kick over to Sandcastle, whatever. I guess we'll use it again.
Right? All right. So the next question, is it common and mechanically right, in quotes, practice to take the full negative traits to get points, or are they debilitating? I'm terrible with my pronunciation. Debilitating, there I can speak,
Nice.
enough that people usually pick few. Go ahead.
Okay. So, negative traits. A lot of it you'll see in, we'll go from roleplay first and then we'll move to mechanical. So roleplay wise, it's really up to you how you want to interpret them and roleplay them. So let's say, for example, one of my negative traits is warped or submissive. Do I need to roleplay that 24/7? Not always, but it's usually a small part of your character when you come into play. Similar to how abilities will influence your character, or how your traits at their core influence your character. But you don't need to think about it all of the time. In fact, it's up to you how you interpret your character and how those flaws come into shape, or at least the trait flaws, at least. As mechanically, when you're doing chops, they can be called in order for the other side to get advantages. So normally you want to keep those a little bit close to your chest. Do you need to do all 5? You can. Getting extra points is always nice at character creation, but it's really up to you what you want to do with it. Most STs will recommend that you do, just to help you flesh out the character. After all, a character with no problems that's completely perfect is usually pretty boring. I'd say do it to flesh out that character. What's wrong with your character? What kind of problems do they have to actively overcome? You can always end up buying off those points later if they become very detrimental to you. Or if you're stacking too much on one negative trait, usually an ST will call it out and say, hey, how are you feeling about this actually being played on the floor in the Discord? Or will you be okay with interpreting those very stark negative traits?
Yeah, I'll also kind of, you said it perfectly, but the only thing I would add is don't be afraid that within the first 6 months of playing, you've made the character and the sheet's not working how you thought it would. Like it's not, my role play went a different direction than I thought. These negs don't really align anymore. Talk to your STs, especially in Coney. I have no problem modifying your sheet after the fact. Like I'm not saying you get like 100 more points, but if you want to change one neg tread to a different neg trade, you want to change a derangement, you want to change a flaw out within like the first 6 months, it's everyone kind of understands that like, hey, you're just getting into the character, what it is, and things might change. So nothing's necessarily set in stone, so don't worry about it too much. The last
For
question,
my
yeah,
personal
go ahead.
experience, sorry, before you jump to the other ones, I had a character that could not read, and that was pretty okay for the funny bit. And then we got to a point where we were reading a lot, like a lot, and the character was starting to become unplayable. So I talked to my STs, and they were like, "Yeah, it's fine. We have no idea how you got this far without reading, anyways. You almost switch it out, choose another one." And now my character can read.
Nice. All right, the last question that you guys gave us is, do I lose the trait I bid in the static challenge as well based on its difficulty? This is a pretty straightforward answer. The answer is yes. Anytime you bid a trait and lose a challenge, you lose that trait. It doesn't matter the type of challenge, but that is the case. So that was the last question. I don't think we really need to go into depth into that one. But I will say that I hope you guys found this video incredibly useful and helpful. If you have more questions, I'm sure A will be happy to join me for another session. For the rest of One World that watches this on After Dark, my YouTube channel, if you guys want more videos between me and A, like old guy, young person, then we will do those. We'll be happy to do them. You can submit us questions, all sorts of things. I think we'll review any topic. Nothing is taboo because now we've tagged the NSA, so whatever.
That's true. We're not getting monetized for this.
We can make money off this.
Oh my god, income.
All right. So again, thanks for the questions. I'm really looking forward and hoping that we can get more of the Turkish players and the EU players. A long time ago, One World by Night used to have European Chronicles. They had a terrible experience in One World by Night and the disconnect between the States and Europe. And my goal, and I've spoken to most of the leadership of One World by Night, is to bring you guys back in if you want to come back in to the LARPing and Vampire the Masquerade into One World with the most kitty gloves, white glove service we can possibly give this time instead of just jump in the pool, figure it out. So we want more questions, what we can do to help facilitate that. If there's, you guys want help running live games in Europe or Turkey, whatever we can do to help support that. I know I'm on board. I know our executive team is on board. A's on board. Like that's just boom, you're done. You're good to go. But yeah, we're here to help, and we don't want to alienate you guys in any way. So don't feel cautious about asking us questions or anything like that. And that's true for anyone else that's watching this video that's from One World. I'm always happy to answer any questions or give any of my ancient knowledge that I can to others, because I always want to leave this place better than I found it, and I've got less years here than I do, than I had here already. A's got way longer and will eventually become the HST of Coney, I'm sure.
Oh god. If there's anything I'd like to send off with, it's that have fun. This game primarily is a hobby, and of course it becomes tumultuous, and there's going to be a lot of different difficulties, but there's also going to be a lot of different triumphs. don't be afraid to try stuff out, and don't be afraid of consequence or winning. It's going to feel very daunting. Very daunting. Just like how trying anything new is going to feel daunting. But you have the support, and if you have the willingness to jump in head first, we'll definitely make sure that you don't hit your head at the bottom of the pool.
Boom. All right, I think we'll leave it on that, and hopefully we'll see you guys soon. If you want more videos, put in the likes in the comments below and hit that bells icon. I've always wanted to say that.
Oh God.
We're gonna get sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. All right, take it easy. We'll see you guys next time.
Cheers.